Howdy there, Jeff Cloud here. I'm in the process right now of doing a multi-video series on home plans and housing for inmates and ex-offenders when they are out. And what's going on here is that I'm going to share with you many years of thousands of people being helped with this, the categories we've used, etc., so on and so forth. This is supposed to reach teachers for Crossroads, as well as anybody that wants to plug in from the public standpoint needing help before somebody gets out with a home plan, or if somebody is already out. And I'll just jump right into it here. I'm going to be recording some times here as I go, etc., so on and so forth, so just bear with me. But first I'll start with what Crossroads Reentry has done and currently does and does not do. That's going to be very important. Currently, here in June of 2018, we do not house people. We did house people in 2007, 2008 here in Huntersville, North Carolina, coming out of jail/prisons. But I had a heart attack in 2008 late and had to close down the facility that we ran, but we gleaned a ton of information and how to do things from that. We may house people in the future. We do provide currently updated, regularly updated contact information for places that do accept in people out of jail or prison, many times with no money, charitable in nature. We do not contact people on the outside of the facility for inmates. Many prisons and jails have in their policies that when a volunteer organization such as Crossroads Reentry comes in, we won't be contacting people on the outside for inmates. So that's why we don't do that. We don't want to get kicked out of a prison for doing something we're not supposed to be doing, because that's what our mission is to help people leave behind incarceration life and the lifestyle. Home plans that we've done to date, literally, we've done thousands of home plans for people in Mecklenburg County, North Carolina. That's our home base, Crossroads Reentry's home base. We've done hundreds of home plans for inmates and those recently released all over North Carolina. We've done more than 100 home plans across the United States of America, and we've even done a dozen or so home plans internationally. I'm going to hit a second key point here, and that second key point is I'm going to be talking here probably for the next 50 to 75 minutes on 9 different categories that Crossroads Reentry has helped people get a roof over their heads, find housing, get a home plan. They all have come in about 9 categories as we look back over the years what we've done. And the first category that I want to talk a little bit with you about is what's called Oxford houses. Oxford houses, okay? Oxford houses. First, who's there? What is an Oxford house? Oxford houses is a charitable organization that has houses all over the nation, all over North Carolina, and the people who are there are serious about their sobriety. Now, who do they let into the Oxford houses? They only let those that are serious about their sobriety. Those Oxford houses that I'm familiar with, they typically on average are about 4-bedroom house in a middle or lower middle class neighborhood. They have about 2.5 baths on average with 2 people to a room. The person that goes to an Oxford house, or people that go to an Oxford house, they average staying there about 3 months to 2 years. It gives them time to save up their money, go get their own place, etc., so on and so forth. Get back onto their feet. They're coming out of jails, prisons, substance abuse centers, brokenness of alcoholism, drug addiction, etc., so on and so forth. There's over 200 Oxford houses in North Carolina alone here in 2018, and there's over 1,200 of them in the United States of America. In North Carolina, there's Oxford houses in at least 27 counties. Here in Mecklenburg County, for example, I know there's roughly 22 for men, about 10 for women, a couple for women with children. But these Oxford houses, they exist to help people get back on their feet, primarily focused on sobriety. I tell people all the time that if you're going to be going to an Oxford house, they're going to be concerned basically about two things. One, stay sober, and two, how you going to pay. Up front, they may let you in for a while without paying, coming out of the jail or prison for a few weeks. About half of them may do that, but they're going to be looking for your pay within just a few weeks to start paying your own way. Roughly in $18, I'm sorry, it's about average of $125 a week. No deposits. 125 pays quote unquote for your rent, but also all your utilities. And usually you have like a landline or something like that. Every now and then, there's people in jail or prison who may think they don't have a substance abuse problem because they haven't used in many, many, many years. But 90% of the people in jails and prisons were convicted or have been arrested for something related to drugs and or alcohol. So the charities that are out there are going to make you address that to get into one of the charities, because they realize they don't want to waste their charitable dollars on people who are going to be drugging, getting drunk, relapsing, etc., so on and so forth, going back to the old lifestyle. So let's say that somebody thinks they don't have a substance abuse problem. They've been in prison 8 years. They haven't used during that time. Why should I go to an Oxford house? I don't have a substance abuse problem. Here's what I point to all the time. The Oxford houses are going to make you go to a recovery program about 3 meetings a week in the evening. And many times, those recovery programs, particularly AA, I'm a 25-year member of AA, fairly soon be covered 25 years. The 12 steps, only the first and the last steps, first and 12th, say anything about alcohol. The rest of it is simply addressing getting dependency on self and dependency on God for life betterment. Sobriety, if you will. Again, these Oxford houses, they require on average about 3 recovery meetings per week, usually in the evening. During the day, typically you can go look for work or work during the day. They're going to require you to go to about 3 meetings in the evening per week. That puts a lot of good structure into somebody's life coming out of jail or prison, because we've all heard it before. Idleness is the devil's playground. So that gives them structured time, much needed structured time. And we at Crossroads Reentry, based upon our experience with helping thousands of inmates / ex-offenders, we believe Oxford houses to be by far the #1 tool in the home plan and housing toolkit for those having no money upon release. We just believe it works better. Our experience has been people get into them easier. They are a way to kind of get on your feet, be able to work during the day, have some accountability for sobriety in the evening, get back on your feet, save the money, etc., so on and so forth. And for us, our experience has been this is the #1 tool. I could literally tell you hundreds of people that I know that have gotten into Oxford houses working through us and connecting with us to get into an Oxford house first, and then secondly, when they get there, get the job and other stuff that they need when they're there. So we call this one our #1 tool in the toolkit for home plans for people coming out of jail or prison with no money. About half of the Oxford houses, at least here in North Carolina, that we've worked with, they will allow people to come into an Oxford house without any money out of the jail or prison, like I said, for just a few weeks, usually 2 to 5 or 6 weeks, somewhere in that range. What they are going to expect, though, that person not to come over, lay on the sofa and start watching soap operas during the day. That person be expected to go look for their job and to show evidence, not just tell, but show evidence that they're in the process of looking for a job during the day. And, of course, connecting with Crossroads Reentry for their job help. They're going to get a document, a toolkit, if you will, for jobs that works for inmates. And it has about 30 tools in the toolkit, and they can sit there and show the guys, here's how I'm doing this, here's how I'm doing that. Currently in 2018, we are, Crossroads Reentry, we are seeing people who follow our Get a Job system that we get to them. Even with dozens of felonies on their record, they're getting jobs in about 7 to 9 days. Again, stay sober, pay on time, and the person generally will not get kicked out of an Oxford house. Do your chores, there's the different division of chores, keeping different things clean. So that you understand the house better, an Oxford house, these houses are democratically run with people voted in and, if need be, voted out. So that's key. Oxford houses run under 2 sets, I call them 2 umbrellas of rules. One is an overarching umbrella over all Oxford houses. For example, if somebody relapses, they get kicked out. There's under umbrella, if you will, that each individual Oxford house can determine some of their individual rules for that particular house, voted upon by its members. For example, some Oxford houses may vote to let somebody come in out of prison or jail fresh out with no money, stay for 5 weeks. Another Oxford house may let them stay for 2 weeks without paying. Another Oxford house may say nobody gets in without paying. So that gives you an idea of their 2 umbrellas, I call it, the overarching umbrella and the under umbrella of how they run Oxford houses. They generally do not consider talking with people or considering people more than 2 months from getting out. So in other words, it's almost a waste of time to try to talk with an Oxford house before 2 months before getting out, because they've seen people, blow up in jails and prisons, get extra time, not come, blah, blah, blah. So they typically wait till within that 2 month before out window. So 2 months is when somebody wants to start talking with them. In our Crossroads Reentry home plans, of course, we put all that information in. We tell them to contact us, make sure they have information at 2 months to go, start reaching out to the Oxford houses. Big question is, how do you get into an Oxford house? Reach out to us at Crossroads Reentry. Of course, our phone number is 704-499-1332. That's 704-499-1332. Crossroads Reentry. Our mailing address is Post Office Box 861. That's P.O. Box 861. Huntersville, North Carolina, 28070. That's Huntersville, North Carolina, 28070. So you can always reach out to us through those 2 venues. You can also email us at 4clouds@bellsouth.net. That's the number 4 and then clouds, like CLOUDS, little @ bellsouth.net. Bell South has 2 L's in it. So 4clouds@bellsouth.net. We can be emailed as well. That was category 1. Here is category 2. Category 2 is my name for it, I should say, is holistic transitional housing. Holistic transitional housing. Holistic means they meet all your needs if you come out of jail or prison. Transitional, they're trying to transition somebody coming out of jail or prison with absolutely nothing. no clothes, no job, no place to live, etc., so on and so forth, and transition that person into their own orderly, sustaining, self-sustaining life. 3 months, 2 years down the line, somewhere in that time range. And they try to do it in an orderly fashion. They have very strict rules at first, and then they lighten the restrictions as the person shows him or herself more and more trustworthy. So when a person first gets here, for example, maybe first month, they just go to work, go to maybe AA meetings, they get no weekend passes, expected to be at the house basically all the time, or work or recovery or with the group that lives at the house. A lot of accountability. Now let's say at the end of the first month, the guy's shown himself trustworthy. He's had P tests maybe 2 times that month, P clean, meaning no dope, no alcohol. Maybe the second month they start letting him have weekend passes, or her have weekend passes every other weekend. Into the second month, moving into the third month, again, the P test and are clean. They may give them more freedom, for example, weekend passes every weekend. But they have pretty strict rules at first, and they lighten up as time goes on. Who's at a holistic transitional housing ministry? It's people that are serious about leaving the incarceration life and lifestyle behind. Okay? That's basically our mission here at Crossroads. We help people leave the incarceration life and lifestyle, because the person doesn't leave the lifestyle behind, they're not leaving the life behind. So we help people leave the incarceration life and lifestyle behind, and that's exactly what holistic transitional ministries, if you will, or housing does, that helps people get out of, when they're getting out of jail or prison. They only let in people that are serious about living that old lifestyle behind. Many of them will have application process. And what people on the inside of jails and prisons don't realize is this. If they were to fill out an application for a holistic transitional housing ministry, there may be 10 people in jails and prisons applying for 2 beds that are open. And here's what that holistic transitional housing ministry, charitable organization would do. They're going to look at that application. They're going to verify information on that application through third parties. For example, reach out to case managers, go online, check infraction records, etc., so on and so forth. And they're going to pick out 2 of the 10 they believe are most serious and have shown evidence in the recent past, say 2 years or so, last 2 years of being incarcerated, who have shown evidence they're leaving behind incarceration life and lifestyle. For example, if AA, Alcoholics Anonymous, is available in a prison, and the guy's been going to that, there's church in prison Bible studies, he's been going to that, he's been taking a reentry class that Crossroads Reentry might be teaching or whatever. He's been taking advantage of everything on the inside that he can do to be a different person than the person who got locked up. That guy, and he's kept his nose clean while in prison, say no infractions or whatever, that guy is going to be a real good candidate and have a good chance of getting in the transitional house. Now, let me tell you who's not going to have a good chance. Those guys or ladies who have a bunch of infractions. Those who have not partaken of what programs are available to change one's life on the inside. So that gives you a general picture of who they let in. The typical houses for holistic transitional housing ministry, they're in, again, middle or lower middle class neighborhoods with 2.5 baths. Or they could be centers like Salvation Army counts as a holistic transitional housing ministry. But they typically have about 2 per room, 2 people per room. Men with men, women with women, wherever that is. So the average stay is about 3 months to 2 years. That gives one time to save for one's own place, to put down a deposit, put deposits for electric, gas, water, etc., those utilities. Have maybe money saved up to get a relatively inexpensive used car, and then go out and get one's place. We of Crossroads Reentry estimate that we know of about 300 holistic transitional housing ministries in North Carolina and well over 1,000 in the nation. So get plugged in with us, and we can get that information for inmates, etc. They exist for helping people get on their feet after jail or prison. So now these aren't necessarily substance abuse related. They may require somebody to go to 1, 2, or 3 AANA meetings a week, or they may not. They may have their own studies, if you will, about recovery or whatever the case is. They help you get a job. They want you to get a job, and they're going to make sure you get a job fairly quickly because they need the money. Not that they need it personally, they need it to run the house. When you put, say, 8 inmates felons in a house, and you try to get insurance for that, insurance is through the roof. Somebody's got to pay for that. The utilities, somebody's got to pay for that. The rent, somebody's got to pay for that. On and on and on it goes. Transitional houses typically only get about half of what's needed money-wise to keep running from the inmates. The rest of it comes from nice people who charitably give their money and charitably give their time. Currently, I know of no transitional housing ministries that get any significant money from government. Most don't want it because of all the strings attached that shut down the mission due to the bureaucracy. So that's what they're trying to do. But they help you transport you to maybe and look for a job. Somebody's donated an old van when they got through with it, and they use that van to run the guys to their jobs. And the ones that haven't got a job yet, they take them by to places, maybe put applications in to get a job before they get a job. We at Crossroads Reentry, based upon our experience, again, with helping thousands of inmates and ex-offenders, we believe this holistic transitional housing to be our number 2 tool in the home plan toolkit for those who have no money getting out of a jail or prison, or if they're already out. So again, this is our number 2 toolkit. If they have a vacancy and one is successful in the application process, they'll let the person coming out of prison or jail stay until he gets a job, and they work diligently with him to do that. And then the person's more likely invited to be there for 3 months to 2 years, depending on how much money they make usually. For example, burger flipper at McDonald's, he's going to need more time to save up money to go get his own place. A welder who maybe got welding training at Lincoln Correctional here in the Metrolina area of North Carolina, he may make, in today's dollars, 2018, $30 an hour. He can save money real quickly. He may only be at the transitional house for 3 months. So you kind of get a picture there of what's going on. If a man stays or woman stays crime-free, sober, and pay on time after getting their job, decent player, gets along with other people in the house, they'll generally not get kicked out. Follow the rules, that kind of thing. Transitional houses, holistic transitional houses, they don't consider realistically talking to someone about coming in until that person gets 4 months before getting out. The reason for that is they're not going to hold beds that long. The approval process and application receiving, etc., takes a couple months. And then they'll make their decision usually about 2 months before a guy gets out, so he can be able to plan, etc. They can hold the bed maybe that long, knowing a guy's getting out, serious about it, etc., so on and so forth. So about 4 months before getting out, that's when somebody in jail or prison wants to actually reach out to these places. Now, we tell the people in jails and prisons at Crossroads Reentry Ministries reach out to us for the home plan at 5 months before getting out. And the reason for that is sometimes we have seen it take a month back and forth in the mail system in a prison. Let me explain what I mean by that. Let's say on January the 1st, a guy writes his letter to Crossroads Reentry. I need a home plan for X county and X state. We have seen from the time he hands that over to an authority in a prison, it may take up to 9 or 10 days simply to get out of the prison and over to the local post office. Wow, that's what we've seen. And of course, you reverse that process when it gets back to the local post office from us and back to the inmate's hands in prison. 10 days that way, we're all of a sudden up to 20. Now, the mail system takes 3 or 4 days potentially, both ways, to get it from the post office to Crossroads Reentry, from Crossroads Reentry to the person. And we typically, to my knowledge, have always, within 48 hours, 2 days, we have, once we've received the letter, we have responded to the letter and got it back in the mailbox. So you add all that up, it's about 30 days. That's why we say write us at 5 months before getting out. That'll get them the information at least 4 months before they get out, and then boom, they can start at the appropriate time with the transitional houses. How do you get into a holistic transitional house? You reach out to us at Crossroads Reentry, where I'd shared that information, same information to you earlier in the Oxford House component of our first category. So the 9 different categories so far, we've covered the first one being the Oxford houses. The second category is holistic transitional housing. The third thing I'd like to share with you, third category, is holistic substance abuse transitional housing programs. Holistic substance abuse transitional housing programs. Pretty much the same as category 2 was, which was holistic transitional housing, except these focus primarily on substance abuse. Many people would call them treatment centers, treatment houses. Some of them are houses in middle or lower middle class neighborhoods. Again, if that's the case, they average about 2.5 baths, 4 rooms, maybe 8 people in the house, 2 to a bedroom kind of thing. Or they could be centers. Most of the time they'd be called treatment centers. Again, all typically 2 to a room. Here at Crossroads Reentry, we estimate we know of about 200 of these in North Carolina, as well as over 1,000 in the United States of America, where a man maybe coming out of jail or prison could get into that. These places may or may not help you get a job. You may stay there for 3 months, not working anywhere, then be released. May stay there 28 days, then be released, no job. Some others, though, they do help people get work. A couple that come to mind real quick are Salvation Army. They try to help people get work at their what I call substance abuse transitional housing programs. Another one we have here in Charlotte, basically what it does is it tries to help people get the jobs as well before they get out and get them gradually back into life. You stay sober there, generally follow the rules, you'll generally not get kicked out. So big key is sobriety there. We generally, of Crossroads Reentry, we generally recommend not going from a treatment program to a treatment program unless there is some extenuating circumstance. Let me explain what I mean by that. We see this happen all the time. We work with a man in jail or prison, and he is part of a substance abuse program in the jail or the prison. And then a counselor or case manager recommends that they go to a treatment program when they get out. Now, here's what the actions show. The actions show that their own treatment program didn't work. Why? They're sending them to another one. We would say, no, an Oxford house is better for that person. But every now and then, I do get an inmate who comes up and says, hey, Cloud, I had the 28-day program here, but I need more, and I'm going to that 1-year program. I need it. I know I need it. Okay, boom, thumbs up. You know your needs? That's good. But if it's just the counselor recommending it because the counselor doesn't know of anything else or the case manager doesn't know of anything else, we don't recommend doing that. We recommend, for example, somebody that was in North Carolina what's called New Directions, which is the substance abuse program. They actually go, I think, 90 days for that while they're incarcerated in North Carolina prison if they choose that. We recommend that person would go maybe to an Oxford house when they get out, not another treatment program, not another holistic substance abuse transitional housing program. Mecklenburg County Jail. I teach in the men's substance abuse pod. We don't recommend typically that the man goes through that 6-week program and then turn right around and go to another program out in Mecklenburg County that's a treatment program. I'll talk with them and say, hey, here's some other things, or I'll share with them the home plan for Mecklenburg County. Here's what else is available, and this is what I would suggest going to. How do you get into a holistic substance abuse transitional housing program? Again, reach out to us, as I mentioned earlier. Us at Crossroads, those 3 venues that I gave you earlier, which was the phone number, the mailing address, or the email address. Any of them will work. Here is the 4th category. 4th category is sex offender housing. Sex offender housing. Now, sex offender housing is, I will say, the toughest need that I see. I get currently about 1,000 calls a year from people on the street coming out of jails and prisons, a few from substance abuse centers that with records, that kind of thing. But and I've been getting many. I've gotten well over 5,000 calls over the years that I've been running Crossroads for this. I've seen every need that evidently the people have, and there's been some unusual ones. We've been blessed to be able to generally point them in the right direction, get them connected for those needs. But of all the needs that I've seen, this one right here is the toughest. Now, before you get the mental impression that all sex offenders are 40-year-old men who molested a 4-year-old boy, that's not what they are. I'll give you an example. If a 21-year-old male has consensual sex with a 17-year-old female, in some states, I think North Carolina is one, her dad gets mad, for example, and he decides to tell the police that person who was 21 years old has committed statutory rape. And he will be branded a sex offender generally the rest of his life, pretty much. Sometimes they may come off the registry 10 years after getting out, blah, 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 blah. But the big component is housing is extremely hard to get. Why? Because so many charities, over 95% of charities out there, they have a rule, no sex offenders. Regular housing, no sex offenders. On and on and on it goes. I hear war stories, see war stories all the time. Sex offenders living in the woods. Sex offenders living under bridges, for example, in Florida, to meet their sex offender laws. I won't go into all that, but just suffice it to say, it is the toughest need to meet of any that I see, bar none. Nothing else is even close. We at Crossroads Reentry, we know about 30 places across North Carolina that either do take in or have indicated they take in sex offenders. Again, over 95% of holistic transitional housing, holistic substance abuse transitional housing programs, and shelters do not allow in sex offenders. And the few that may have done it last month, they changed their policy and don't do it this month. So our sex offender list, at least for North Carolina, we do have some sex offender connections in other states as well, too, for getting housing. It's gold for the inmates. Gold, I'm telling you, for a sex offender inmate. Oxford houses, which was the first of our categories on 9 ways to get a roof over a man's or woman's head when they get out of jail or prison. Oxford houses do not take sex offenders. It's the toughest need. It's the Rubik's Cube, meaning it's the hardest to solve. There's all kinds of dynamics in it. Right Crossroads, 5 months before you get out. Or 4 months if it's direct, like an email or a call that comes in. But if it's writing, write us 5 months before. Give a month for the mail system. But if somebody can get a programmer to email us at the 4-month mark. If they can direct call, which many can now in jails and prisons, Crossroads does take direct calls from prisons and jails. We do not take collect calls. What we learned was that collect calls are random in how much they charge. We remember 10 years ago or so getting a collect call from the jail, took it one Sunday at 2 p.m., 5-minute phone call, it was $2. Next Sunday, same time, same length of call from the same facility, $22. So we said we can't do that with very limited funds, so we no longer do that. Our first category of these the different categories we get a roof was the Oxford houses. Second was the holistic transitional housing places. Third was your holistic substance abuse transitional places. Fourth, sex offender housing. Our fifth category I'm launching into right now is our veterans housing charities. Here at Crossroads, we know about a half a dozen or so charities, 501c3s, that specialize in helping veterans. And we believe that might be and probably is the best place to start, maybe before starting out with the VA, Veterans Association, or a big government agency. These small charitable organizations many times have been there and done it with dozens, hundreds, thousands of people, veterans that is, trying to get housing, and they know how to circumvent the bureaucracy of big government, Veterans Administration, federal government, of course. So that's why we recommend that people reach out to them first. And they may know of this place over here is a little small charity. It takes in veterans only. Let's get him connected with them. How do you get into one of these places? Again, reach out to Crossroads Reentry, as we shared that information, our contact ways, those 3 major ways of contacting us. So just reach out to us for that. We can get you some veteran housing charitable organization information that these people can be reached out to. We include it with our home plans for those who answer the question, and we'll talk about that later, our 7 questions to get a home plan. Those who indicate they're a veteran, they get this information. That's the 5th category. The 6th category is apartments and private houses that indicate they exclude criminal background checks. I'm going to say that again. The 6th category is apartments and houses that indicate they exclude criminal background checks. Now, vast majority of apartments and private houses out there for rent, they don't allow felons into their places. So let's say a man's getting out of jail or prison. He's more likely got a felony or felonies, and he's not going to get into these places. But we've discovered a website called socialserve.com where you can go and see if there's any houses and or apartments for rent that exclude criminal background checks. So for those inmates, and personally they've got, or family or friends who would be able to help them to this tune, we believe if they've got $1,500 upwards, they can get their own place. Why $1,500? Well, typically the cheapest we see one of these apartments, for example, or duplexes, or a house small in the hood kind of thing, it's $500 a month rent. It's going to cost you the first month's rent deposit. Now we're up to $1,000. It's going to cost an inmate who gets out about $500 to get 3 utilities cut on, because they're going to be $200, $150 or so for each one of those deposit. For example, water, $200 deposit. Gas, $150 deposit. Electricity, $200 deposit. So basically you're at $500 for those deposits. So they need about $1,500 to get into one of these places in an orderly fashion. I did a check this month of our local region, North Carolina here, and here in June of 2018, it showed 8 places in the Charlotte region, in Charlotte, Mecklenburg County, a county of 1 million people, We had 8 places that exclude criminal background checks. They ranged in rental rates from $465 a month to $1,200 a month. So that's 8 places that say they exclude criminal background checks. Just to give you an idea, Charlotte is sort of like a mini Atlanta. It's kind of like thinking Atlanta cut in half, basically, to give you the dynamics of our community. I also checked Raleigh, North Carolina. Now, Raleigh, Wake County, is very much urban yuppie, up and coming, mobile, high-tech jobs, blah, 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 blah. There was only one place in Raleigh for rent, and it rented for $950. For those who know North Carolina, know the little towns and cities in here, I checked on Hickory, and I checked on Monroe. They didn't have any. Now, they're relatively smaller. Hickory has a population of about 50,000. I'm guessing Monroe has a population of 15,000, 20,000. Union County might be a little bit more, 50,000, 60,000 people now, but those are relatively small places. They didn't have any. So I checked on Fayetteville, North Carolina, Cumberland County the other day. I think it had 6. Fayetteville's probably North Carolina's 8th, 10th largest city. So that gives you just a general idea of what you're looking at. Rural areas, probably 0. Urban areas, if it's like in Atlanta or Charlotte, should have enough substantial ones. Big urban areas that may be yuppie, might be 1 or none. So you kind of get the picture there. Little mid-sized towns, 20, 50,000, we're not seeing any yet. That mean they're not there, not mean we won't look. But again, that's just the information that's out there. There's no need to start looking into these types of places until one's about 2 months out. And the reason for that is, of course, rental places, don't start really getting serious with people until they know they can move in within 2 months. What that means for an inmate, he's not going to be able to make phone calls and make this happen. He's going to generally have to have somebody on the outside be able to make this happen. Why? Because contracts have to be signed. Somebody has to come into the office. Applications had to be filled out, et cetera, so on and so forth. So we always basically say this. For all practical purposes, somebody has to take the lead that's already on the outside. And that's okay. They might could take the lead and pay for your place and get you in, that kind of thing, if you happen to be an inmate on the inside. How do you get into one? Again, reach out to Crossroads, as I've told you previously. All right, that brings us to our number 7 category. This one is a rare one. I've probably only helped 1 or 2 or 3 guys in jail or prison over many, many, many years of doing this with this category. It's buying your own house. Buying your own house. We at Crossroads Reentry don't even consider buying your own house unless you got about $15,000 to put down. Now, I'm going to explain why that. Most of us will remember the 2007 to roughly 2012 housing market meltdown. What created that? Here's basically what created it. I'll never forget, in 2006, I had just delivered turkeys to the poor people, quote unquote, in Mecklenburg County for Thanksgiving, 2006. I left my 1,700 square foot house here. That time was 20 years old. And I went and started going into 1,700 square foot brand new houses in the hood, delivering the free turkeys to the poor people. That's a head scratcher. So I got, maybe a week later, I called up and was talking to a buddy of mine, then with one of the big banks down here in Charlotte. We're, by the way, the number 2 financial city in the world, I understand it, on banks and the finances. And I said to him at one of the big banks, I said, what's going on? Now how come people are getting 1,700 square foot houses brand new in the hood? And he said, Cloud, you won't believe it, we're doing ninja loans. I said, what? He said, ninja loans. I said, what's ninja? He said, no income, no jobs, no assets. I said, say that again. He said, no income, no jobs, no assets, meaning they were loaning people money who had no income, no jobs, no assets. I said, what? He said, Cloud, we're bundling these loans up into packages of 100,000 loans, not $100,000 loans, 100,000 loans at a time. And he said, we're selling them to investors. For example, 401k places, they're buying them hand over fist, and investors are buying them, and blah, 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 blah. And he said, we, the big banks, know we sold so many of them, we made a killing. All right. And we know sooner or later we're going to be, the bubble's going to burst. It's going to fall down. We're going to lose on one of them. He said, we already have a plan in place for what's going to happen then. We're going to start hollering, bank's too big to fail. We're too big to fail. If you let us fail, we'll go back into the Great Depression. Of course, that's exactly what happened. Now, what happened to the people who got the loans in the hood? They couldn't pay their loans off. They get foreclosed upon. 2008, 2009, those houses are selling for pennies on the dollar. Investors are swooping in who had cash. They buy them up. They sell them out for rent. But the people who got the loans, till they pay off their loan, for all practical purposes, they ruin their credit forever and will never be able to get another house. So we at Crossroads don't want to set people up for that. What we do, for example, we say, in Charlotte, let's take a $100,000 house. The worst we've ever seen the housing market go down is 15%. So let's say you bought a house today, $100,000, and you put $15,000 down. You would only need $85,000 to pay off the house. And let's say 6 months from now, it's dropped down to the housing worst it's ever seen, from $100,000 down to $85,000. Bad housing market. You get sick. You have to sell that house. You sell it for $85,000. You pay off your loan. You have not ruined your chances of getting a house forever in the future. Now, who in the world knows for sure what they're going to do 30 years from now? They're going to pay every payment on time for 360 payments once every month for 30 years? Miss one of them, you could get foreclosed upon. Could you get sick? Could you get injured, not work? Money doesn't come flowing in to people that happens to immediately. The government's not going to catch you and pay for your bills. Not for your house payments. So that's why we recommend, of course, the roughly 15%, 20% down. So that's why we say it. You'll never be upside down doing that. How do you get information on this? Reach out to Crossroads again. We would help anybody with that. What we see this one mainly for would be guys and ladies who seriously turned their life around. They've been out there 5, 10 years. They've been saving their money, doing what they're supposed to be doing. They end up saying, okay, they got $15,000 down. They can give their put down on a house. Give us a call. We'll share with you how to go about it. Where do you find the best rates? What banks are best to deal with? Most people don't even realize, for example, that some credit unions are 501c3 charitable organizations, meaning they make no profit. Well, guess what? If you get a loan from a place that makes no profit, you don't have to pay the profit. But you get a loan from the big bank, they making plenty of profit. Their top execs are making gazillions of dollars. The shareholders are making gazillions of dollars. Guess who pays for that? You paying the loan. So that's just a teaser, if you will, of some of the things that we would be coaching somebody on. Here's what we recommend. Now realize Crossroads doesn't get a dime for this. We're just trying to help people better their lives, to get more stable, to get their family stable, to further leave behind the old incarceration life and lifestyle. And that's one great way to do it, is to get one's house, buying one's own house. Now, I'm going to go ahead and about at the 50-minute mark on this video, and I'm trying to keep these videos down to about 50 minutes so that our teachers could teach for 50 minutes on a particular session. Sometimes we're limited to 1 hour in a jail or prison for the actual teaching time. So I'm going to kill this at 50 minutes. But we'll pick up in the next video with our 8th category, which is going to be homeless on the street after shelters, and our 9th category will be shelters. So I'll leave you with those 7 categories again, just as a refresher. First category was the Oxford houses. Secondly was holistic transitional houses. Third was holistic substance abuse transitional housing programs. Fourth was sex offender housing. Fifth was the veteran housing. Sixth, apartments and houses that exclude criminal background checks. Seventh, buying your own house. And I'll see you in the next video. As I like to conclude these things, we've all been blessed, so let's go be a blessing.